Hello and welcome to the Rask Network. What you're about to hear and see is limited to general financial information only. Please be sure to speak to your financial planner or refer to our financial services guide available at rask.com.au/FSG before acting on the information.
Welcome back to the podcast. Zara, we were just talking, before we started recording, we were just talking about the first episode we did together.
Yes.
And how far you've come.
12 months ago.
Yeah. I can't believe it's been 12 months already.
I know, it's crazy. It was, I was so wildly nervous. I think I had 3 hours sleep, maybe. And remember how clammy my hands were? I was so like...
And you're sitting there like this.
I was sitting there like on my hands being like, oh my God, I'm so nervous. I'm so sweaty.
Yeah. And look how far you've come. But you nailed that
Not
first one.
Not so sweaty anymore.
Just fidgeting. if you're watching this episode, there's a little...
I do. I fidget all the
cable
time.
tie. What is that?
I don't know. I think it's a little... I'm not sure.
Yeah. It is a little cable tie.
Or something.
But yes, it's now almost 12 months on. Is it?
Yeah.
It's more than 12 months?
No, I think it's almost on 12 months. Yeah, I think we started in Feb.
Cool. And what's been a highlight?
Oh, talking with you guys.
Yeah, good stuff.
Getting to know you guys has definitely been the highlight.
On that, we thought we should reintroduce ourselves for any new listeners.
Yeah.
So Zara, who are you?
Good question. My name is Zara, if you didn't already know. And I work with you and Owen and Daniel through Inflection and also the marketing component of the business. But I've worked in marketing for almost a decade now, everything from in-house kind of agency focused, lots of different businesses, lots of different brands, lots of different industries. And my kind of, I guess, core passion really comes down to like consumer psychology and really understanding kind of what makes people buy and how to communicate with people. Probably more so than the execution of the marketing work, but it really is understanding that consumer psychology and how to tap into that personality and how to tap into that buyer persona.
To dive a bit deeper in that, let's use the accounting business. Mm-hmm. So what would that look like, strategy versus consumer psychology, if our niche was tradespeople?
Yeah, good question. So consumer psychology, I guess, also goes into understanding like your customer avatar and figure out who you're talking to and then how your business can connect with those people. So understanding, where they're spending their time, why they spend their time there, what their kind of like innate behavioral traits are and their buying behaviors. Are they like a brand loyalist? Typically an older generation is a brand loyalist. Are they more open to kind of trialing new brands and new businesses, in which case you can kind of test a few different things, and kind of then also understanding what sort of content works for those people as well and how to engage them and how to connect with them. And then I guess the execution of the work is kind of cool once you've kind of figured out that bigger picture strategy. Then it's, okay, cool. Now do we look at paid advertising? Do we look at organic marketing and influencers? Do we look at email marketing? Like what's the way that we then engage with these people? And then actually executing the work. So then going away and setting up the paid ads and going away and, setting up that email marketing automation.
Cool.
Yeah.
And myself, who I am.
Who are you?
Who are you? So I run with Daniel, Grace-Based Advisory. We've been doing that for, I think this is year 3 now, but we've both been accountants this is our 10th year. So
wow.
Yeah.
Experienced, one might say.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess 10 years, you'd hope so. So yeah, Dan and I started that business 3 years ago now, and we started off in a shoebox office, just the two of us.
Yeah.
And now we're at a team of 14.
Wow.
We have another person starting tomorrow. That'll be the 14th team member. So
that's huge.
Yeah, it's been a very exciting journey, very fun
awesome.
journey, and an interesting one too, because traditionally in our industry, it takes so many years to grow a business to that size.
Yeah.
So it's upon reflecting, it's pretty good.
What do you think it is? Like, what was your secret sauce? Like, why do you think you guys have been able to grow to the scale that you have so quickly?
A couple of things. I think the first one is the marketing that we do. So like the podcast, that's helped quite a lot.
Yep.
And really focusing on marketing, really focusing on processes. Those are probably the two things that have led to the most growth, because what would happen is we get a big influx of leads, and then it's like, okay, crap, we need to be able to do the work and have the systems to do the work.
Of course.
And it's just been up and down like that. And now we're starting to get that smoother line, as opposed to like influx. We need to hire people, we need better systems, and then the leads will drop off. So it's just about finding that consistency. I think that's been a big difference, and really focusing on reinvesting money back into the business. Like we always hire before we would need that person. So I think that's been a big thing too, because Dan and I have always been comfortable with, taking peanuts and reinvesting all the money back into the business. And I think that's been a big thing as well, is really making a conscious effort to reinvest money back into the business.
How long do you think it took to kind of, because obviously that's a mindset that you guys have chosen when you started your business journey. It's not necessarily a common one. There's a lot of business owners out there that will make the money and take the money for a profit or for themselves before reinvesting. And then you get stuck in that situation where you don't have enough staff or whatever it might look like. How long did it take you to develop that mindset? Or was it something that you just kind of went in and you were like, this is what we're doing?
Yep. From the start, we agreed this is what we're comfortable taking. At the start, it was $500 a week. And we're going to have to just make it work. And then everything over and above that's going back into the business. So, from the start, to be honest, and we've stuck with that up until now. We have increased our wage slightly, but it's still money back into the business, reinvest. Like if you want to hire someone, if we go through a recruiter, it can cost between $15,000 and $30,000. Marketing, we're doing a rebrand at the moment. Sky can be the limit for that stuff too.
Totally.
Even like investing in our marketing, investing in staff and systems. Even with systems, what people don't think about a lot is like there's training time there. So you're paying your staff a wage and they're not doing any income generating work. So if we invest in a system and they need training and they need to learn how to do it, well, that could be 2 steps back, but in theory, well, hopefully 10 steps forward. So it's just about having that mindset. With
that training, it's then also, even if they do then start doing like revenue work, it still needs to be checked by somebody else. So then it's kind of that piece of work that one person's doing, someone else has to review it. So there's like an element of, there's extra cost involved in that work being done.
100%. And there's just so much to it. I mean, team structure, like we've tried things, we've failed at things and things have worked. We've spent money and have had no return on it. So I think it's being a bit comfortable with, you have to be comfortable with that and you have to be comfortable with being wrong. Because if you think you know everything, you're just doomed to fail. Because a lot of the times Dan and I will try something and it's like, okay, cool, that didn't work. What do we learn from it? It cost X amount of dollars. Like, that sucks. But this is the lesson.
What do you think your biggest, I tend not to call them mistakes because I feel like there's just like this negative association with the word mistakes, and I think it just comes from like the education system. You go through school and if you make a mistake you get a red X next to it and your teacher has to correct you. But I think that for the sake of it, using the word mistakes, I think they're so important to business growth and success, because if you make a mistake it probably means that you're taking a risk, and it's usually the risks that are going to pay off with the growth. So what would you say has been, quote unquote, the biggest mistake that you guys have made?
I think it was early on when we hired early, but we hired someone that was a junior when we probably should have hired in a more senior position. I think that would have saved us heaps of time. I think that's probably the biggest one, because again, it's hard because this junior person is a third of the cost or can be a quarter of the cost of a senior person, and you're like, geez, can we afford it? But at the end of the day, Dan and I sat with this person and had to teach them everything. But she's great. Like super happy that we did that. But looking back, if we had someone that was in a more senior position, it would give us more time to do podcasts, focus on our marketing, building our own brand, developing our sales process and all of that stuff.
Focus on those like revenue generating.
100%. And I think another learning was when we got our first website done, and we were very fresh and didn't really know the marketing at all, to be honest. And we sort of were just led down a track where we gave someone our blind trust and just thought, all good, they'll look after us. Where, get a website built, it's all good. And they just used a template from, what's it called? On WordPress?
WordPress or Elementor?
Elementor template that was just copy and pasted from examples that we gave him. And they were like, oh yeah, that's a good pickup. And like for me, that's when I went, okay, I need to have some type of baseline understanding of this stuff before I entrust other people who I don't know. And look, if I know someone, I'm happy to take their lead. But if I don't know someone and I'm going down the path of marketing back then, not you, because you do all of our stuff now. But back then it's like, well, I had no idea what any of this was. And I think if I did, I would have asked the questions and been able to have that two-way conversation as opposed to them just saying, this is what you're doing, this is how it works. And it's like, okay, cool. You're the professional. we believe what you're going to say.
Yep.
So for me, that was a very big learning.
Yeah, that education part is just huge.
Yeah.
And when you're going into business, you're so green in so many areas other than usually your skill set.
Yeah.
And so it's
that's
like,
right.
you know, like when I started Inflection, it was like, cool, I can do marketing and I can do team development. But like getting across like financials, understanding like a P&L, like balance sheet.
Yeah.
Do you know, like how many times you sat down with me and were like, ran me through how to read it and how to use it. And obviously now I get it, but it's just something that I think if you're not open to learning and making mistakes, but open to learning in those early days, then you're doomed to fail essentially.
Yeah, I agree. And I think in saying that, there's so much out there now, so many resources, whether it's books, whether it's podcasts, whether it's YouTube videos, where you can learn all of this stuff.
Totally.
Like everything. There really is no excuse for not being able to have some type of baseline understanding of the different areas of your business, whether it's HR, whether it's marketing, accounting, finance, sales. Like you can just, it's a YouTube search away. I love YouTube and I love reading.
Yeah.
But for me, if you're very green, I think YouTube's really good because you can see all the examples and it's
totally
shorter than reading a book if you're a bit time poor. But I just think there's so much out there now where you learn from our mistakes.
Yeah, totally.
Like save yourself $6,500 for an elemental website that probably cost $100.
Yeah, 100%.
Because again, no idea.
Yeah.
No
Yeah,
idea.
exactly. I think staffing is probably the most common ones. That was definitely one of the mistakes that I made early in the business journey was same kind of thing. I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to get someone in that's a little bit junior that I know can do the work, but I'm going to hope that they can do this work and also I can upskill them because you have so much time when you're starting a business. I was like, yeah, I'll upskill them in this area, and didn't work.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
And
it happens.
It was like, and we were able to rectify it. But I think I tried a few different types before we kind of landed on what is like a very senior person in the industry. And yeah, I mean, again, proof's in the pudding. It's like the quality of work, the deliverables, the results are like wildly better. Not to mention the conversations, the intelligent conversations that I can have with that team member now as a result of just their education and their own skill set is so much further along. So kind of just having someone else to bounce ideas off. And then I think maybe the second mistake, I'm not sure if it's a mistake yet, is we paid for a sales course.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of money very early. And it was a sales course. So obviously the sales rep was amazing. And then not quite sure if the value that's been taken out of the course is worth what we paid for it.
Yep.
There's definitely been some highlights and things that have come out of it that I'm like, oh, cool, hadn't thought about that. Oh, we can readdress and change something. But I think maybe early days in the business, I'm like, oh, damn, could that money could have been spent better elsewhere.
Yeah, 100%. It's funny you mentioned that because we did a very similar thing very early on and like, could we have spent that money on other things? Yep, 100%. But like I got one thing from that program and that's why we're sitting here.
Yeah.
So for me,
so worth
it's like, I will pay it 100 times over because I've met so many great people and formed new business relationships, new business. And it's just about getting that one thing. And whether that's a course, whether that's a YouTube video or a book, it's just if you can get that one golden nugget out of it, perfect.
Yes.
Job done.
Yep.
So for me, when I've done something like that, that's been the benefit out of it. And I didn't realize that until like a year or two on where I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Because I thought, oh, pointless. Scammed. Waste of money.
Yeah.
And then I go back and it's like, well,
actually, that's something that I use today.
It's like a 10-second thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, here we are from that.
Yeah.
So for me, it's a big learning. And on the hiring thing, I actually just finished reading the book Good to Great by Jim Collins.
Yes, good book.
It is. Have you read it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. And he talks about that bus concept where it doesn't matter where you're going. It's not long as the people that are on the bus are with you, then you can
do anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he talks about, I'm pretty sure it's in that book where he talks about hiring people and he talks about how if you have to hire slow and fire fast because if you don't do that, the culture that you're going to create is one of, you being okay with that.
Yep.
Like if there's 10 people in your team and everyone knows that person's not performing well, then what culture is that setting?
Absolutely. And there's they talk about that in the No Rules book,
Yes.
the Netflix book. But yeah, good to great. That analogy of like making sure you have the right people on the bus with you, and if they're not the right person, then getting them off the bus at the next stop as soon as possible. And the hire slow, fire fast, it's a really great concept, but honest to God, like in execution, it can be really hard.
Yeah.
Obviously, firing people is like literally one of the worst things
No,
you
it
ever
is,
have
for
to
me
do.
personally, it is
horrible,
the worst.
Horrible. And so coming to the idea of realizing that this person isn't the right person to be in that seat, and that you have to, get them off the bus. And the quicker that you do that, like you said, because if you don't, the talent density drops.
Yeah.
So if you, like you said, if you have that one person in the team, maybe you've got a team of 5 people, if you're a small business, and one of those people isn't playing the game, they're not up to scratch, that's a fifth of your team that is not pulling their weight, that is dropping the ball, that is, showing up with the wrong attitude, showing up with the wrong culture, not executing their work to the standard that, is the quality that you want to be delivering within your business. So, and it can be so hard. And then obviously as your business expands, one of the organizations I used to work at, we had 120 people, and my role as like head of people and development was bringing the right people into the company, and then unfortunately moving the wrong people out of the company. And being able to recognize that really quickly takes time, like recognize that it's not the right person, but there definitely are like signs early on. And
what are some of those signs?
Yeah, it's really hard. There's a lot. I mean, where I used to work was it was a very heavy culture organization. And so there was an element of, it was an agency.
What does that mean? Culture?
So
heavy culture.
Essentially, there was like a culture that essentially worked, and there was a culture that didn't work.
Right.
And agency life typically is extremely fast paced. It moves super quickly. The benefits of that mean that you learn so much faster than you would in-house. But also the stress levels can be pretty crazy because you're juggling and changing hats all the time between heaps of different businesses, heaps of different strategies, heaps of different services, and constantly being like, okay, this is what this person wants. This is what this business needs. I need to change it, or I need to tweak something for this business. And so there's an element of, we had a really extensive training program, and going back to kind of cost of hiring, we worked out that in the first 4 weeks of having someone on board from hiring through to having that end of their first 4 weeks, it costs the company 30 grand, which is a lot of money.
Yeah.
Particularly if we're hiring like multiple people a month. So it's like you needed to work out within those first 4 weeks if this person essentially was kind of cut out for the job. And the training program went for 3 months, but the first 4 weeks was like really identifying how they fitted into the role, how they fitted into the team. And it wasn't necessarily like a hard and fast, as in you either do or you don't, but it was more like recognizing if there were signs that someone will move into this role and will be successful.
Yep.
And kind of being able to recognize whether it was like an attitude component, whether it was like, resilience was something like workplace resilience and the ability to kind of navigate stress, whether it was being able to and when I say that, I don't mean being able to take on heaps of stress and like just power through it and just like head down, just agency culture, more just like, cool, being able to recognize this is what my trigger points are. This is when I'm starting to feel stressed, and I can verbalize it, and I can have a conversation with someone when I'm getting to a point where I'm like, okay, hey, this is starting to feel overwhelming, not when you're at the point where you're like, I'm crumbling and I can't function.
Yep.
But being able to kind of see these things in people. And again, I did this for a really long period of time, and I built the training program, and probably while the duration of me being in that role, I probably maybe hired 40 or 50 people in the space of like 2 years, which is a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I was responsible for their training as well and their duration at the organization. So there was a lot that kind of was, I guess it's not innate, but I think maybe from the experience of the density of experience of being in that role whilst in like huge growth and acceleration phase, was like I had to pick up on things super quickly, and I had to recognize things in people really, really quickly. And when you're kind of dealing with it at that scale, we would bring people on maybe like 4 or 5 people at a time. So you came in a group, which had benefits of education and learning and being able to kind of bounce ideas off one another. And then again, going back to that like talent density thing, if you've got 4 or 5 people and you've got 4 people that are outstanding and there's one person that's not, it kind of really stands out.
Yeah.
And obviously you go through the motions of like, cool, maybe we're going to educate them in a different way. Maybe we're going to take them through a different training program. Maybe they just learn differently to the way that this particular trainer is training them. So they're going to go with somebody else. But then after 4 weeks, it's either a pattern or it's something that's kind of, broken and changed. So that was a very long-winded way of answering your question.
That's right, we got there. And you said that you hired between 40 and 50 people. How many people did you have to tap on the shoulder and see that?
Thankfully, not heaps.
Good.
There was, the organisation, there was a couple of redundancies, and we did like a huge company restructure where it was about probably 70% of the company. We had to change jobs, job descriptions, skill sets, salaries, all of that was associated. So as part of that, there was natural kind of people that were like, okay, this role doesn't suit me anymore. I'm going to move on. But yeah, there was a couple of really horrible moments, and I remember the very first time I had to do it, absolutely
train wreck.
Absolute train wreck. It was horrible because I was so wildly nervous because I didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
I personally liked this person and I felt for them, and I was personally training them as well. So I was developing this relationship with them, educating them, kind of helping them navigate the role and the challenges in the role. And then I just kind of had to be like, it's not working, And they were crying and I was sweating and it was just like this horrible experience. But, it was the first time I'd done it.
Yeah.
And not necessarily a mistake, but something that I learned so much from, that I was like, okay, I need to really pull it together when I go into these meetings, and I have to be super prepared in terms of what I'm saying, what the potential outcomes could be in terms of how they're going to react and how they're going to respond, because obviously unfortunately, some people would get really angry.
Yep.
And I would have to navigate that.
Yep.
But some people would cry. Obviously, it's an extremely emotional, difficult time. So you have to be able to navigate that, and you have to be able to empathize with them. And the same way that if that angry person is kind of lashing out at you, which happened, quite aggressively, you had to be able to kind of empathize and calm the situation down. And that's a skill set that can take a really long time to develop.
Yeah.
But then on the other side of it, you've got someone that is like, yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Like, I agree.
Well, that would be the best outcome.
Yeah, obviously. But I think that came from, once it got to that, I was definitely better at having those conversations once I'd done more of them, which sounds horrible, but because I was able to, I guess, nip things in the bud so much sooner. So when I was working with someone and for whatever reason the performance wasn't up to standard, rather than waiting until week 4 and doing my final assessment in week 4, I would be like, okay, week 1, where are we at? Okay, let's kind of, maybe there's first week nerves, they're kind of navigating the role, obviously all of the things with being a new person in an organization. Cool, week 2, where are we at? Are we moving towards like rectifying these things? Are we, is there effort in trying to resolve these things? Week 3, so it was like I was doing a week by week analysis in the end.
Yeah, so you're staying, you're on top of it as it's moving.
Yeah, and then if things were moving, I'd say something. If things weren't moving, I would say something. So it was just like constant communication, which I think is just so important, is having that consistently transparent and open communication between all parties, because to be clear is to be kind.
Yeah.
So it's like the clearer you are, whether it's happy news or sad news, the clearer you are, the kinder it is for everybody involved.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it really highlights like that example that we were just speaking about, that say it's if you have 5 team members and one of them's just not cutting it, like that affects your business in so many ways. And I think it's probably one of the most common things, because it's such a crap conversation to have with people, and so many people put it in the too hard basket. But you have to be able to have those conversations, because if you're a team of 5, to stick to that example, and it's one person, that's 1/5 of your wage cost.
Yeah.
If they're a client-facing person and they're not good enough, well, how's that affecting your brand image? What's their quality of service? Regardless of what industry you're in, you have to be comfortable to have that chat.
Yeah. And I think it's, if you're addressing it as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Like, don't wait until until a client comes to you and flags something, or, a service is not delivered, or, until essentially a huge red flag comes up. As soon as there's like a little like, oh, maybe that's not right. Like this orange flag starting to be waved.
Yeah.
Maybe we're like at the traffic lights and it's like a yellow, orange. Have the conversation.
Yeah.
Don't wait until it's at the point where it's like, I cannot believe this has happened.
Yeah.
And because I think the other thing is like being able to remove your emotions from those conversations as soon as possible is so important, because if you're going into it emotionally heated because something really terrible has happened and a client's come forward and complained and dropped your dropped your agency or your service or whatever, and it's a loss of revenue, then you're coming at it from a very different angle than if like hey,
if you're cool, calm,
this is
collected.
Yeah, exactly. And I think then that conversation is just so much smoother, and the person on the other side of the table is more open to that feedback as well.
100%. I think it's the biggest thing, one of the biggest things for small business owners.
Absolutely.
And like I said, it affects them in every single way. It's not just the person, wages, revenue, whatever it is. I think it's something that does need to be nipped in the butt quickly. And we learned the hard way because it is a hard conversation. But you're right. The more times you have it, the easier it does get.
Yeah. And staffing is one of the hardest things in business.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
I reckon.
Because you can learn heaps of other skills, understanding marketing, its experience, its kind of openness and education, understanding financials, balance sheets, it's self-education. But it's not necessarily having to have a conversation that's conflict-driven or difficult with somebody else. It just takes time. Yeah,
I agree. Did you read any books or any podcasts that really stuck with you over the last few weeks?
Yeah, I'm kind of going through a bit of what would I call it? I'm reading a lot of different books at the moment, and I don't know if it's just my personality type, but I have to usually read like either a business book or like a, for lack of better words, like a self-help book or something, along with like a stupid fiction. And I've started reading Start With Why by Simon Sinek again, but then his follow-up book, which is Find Your Why. And so they kind of bleed into one another. And they're really great. Again, just coming back to kind of why we exist, again, kind of tapping into that consumer psychology component. I mean, Simon Sinek is probably one of my all-time favorite authors, and just generally kind of public speakers. I think he's so incredible and his outlook is so incredible. But yeah, so those two. And then I have been listening to a few different podcasts, not necessarily personal business growth podcasts, but a lot of, I guess like finance education or like business, but like kind of the way that the future's changing with like the implementation of, or the adoption of AI, Web3, decentralization of markets and those kinds of things. And I think because it's probably not something that I'm necessarily talking about all the time, it's so interesting to learn as much as I can about that. And it's just something that I feel like every time I listen to it, I'm just like, oh my God, did you hear this thing? I know I was just like ranting to you and James about it. Like, I listened to this amazing Diary of a CEO episode the other day and blah, blah, blah. And James is like, yeah, I've listened to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think probably, and then also, reading, like fiction novels that I find really boring. And I actually kind of really struggle to read them, but I need them to almost like switch off.
Yeah.
And like just I read it for half an hour at night to help myself fall asleep. Really.
Yeah. Cool.
And it works.
Cool.
What about you?
I've read a couple. I read the most recent one. I'm actually reading Diary of a CEO's book.
Ah, cool.
So that's a interesting read.
Yep.
He has a lot of cool concepts in there. I've also read The Outsiders, which is by William Thorndike. I think that's how you pronounce it. He just talks through, I think it's 8 CEOs and how they allocate capital in their business. So that's been a very interesting one in terms of, like, I always read things about like very specific topics, but at the end of the day, this book has been an eye-opener in terms of like all it is. It's like how are you going to spend your money in your business? Yeah. Is it to improve operational efficiency? Is it to pay out dividends? I mean, obviously he's talking about massive companies. Like he uses examples of Warren Buffett, who runs a massive conglomerate. And he talks about the main things is just like where you deploy your money. Is it people, like we've been speaking about? Is it marketing? Like where is it to grow the business? Is it to buy more businesses? Is it to pay out dividends to shareholders? He talks about buying stock as well, buying stock back as a public company. So that's been a very, very interesting read, and probably one of my most recent favorite, to be honest. And I've read Good to Great again. That's a great book.
Such a good book.
I would recommend that to everyone.
Yeah,
because it really does touch on so many different things from technology, people, and just leadership as well.
Yeah, it's amazing. There's so many incredible books out there. And I think we're going to do you're going to do in the future a little book club podcast episode Which actually, in saying that, we were talking about it being like, 7 lessons from the masters and all the books that you've read and like condensing and breaking down the top business lessons. But maybe we should start a book club.
Yeah, let's do it. What is the book club?
What is a book club?
Yeah, is that where you read a book and you'll come together and talk about it?
I'm sorry. What is a book club?
Is that book club? Is that how it works?
We're looking at Adrian at the moment. Yes, that's how a book club works. Have you never been part of a book club?
No.
Okay.
I just read them by myself.
Yeah, fair.
So, okay, let's say it's a book club.
Yeah.
Does that mean that we would say, okay, this week we're both going to read...
This week? Maybe like this month.
No,
essentially...
in theory.
Yeah,
so
okay,
like,
go.
You haven't read it yet? So we're going to read 2 chapters and then we're going to discuss them.
Ah, sure.
Is that a book club?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So we used to have a book club at one of the companies I worked at, and it'd be once a month. We had a book and all of the different leaders in the organization chose a book. And at each week in our kind of like weekly whip, we would be like, cool, let's have read 3 chapters. So exactly what you just said.
Yep.
And then it's like, what are the kind of core takeaways? And then at the end of the month, we would say, okay, well, is there anything in the organization that we're going to do that we might change, implement as a result of reading this book? But maybe what we could do is we could link it in through to the Inflection. This is totally on the fly. But maybe we could link it into the Inflection community, and we could have like a separate space. So we've got like the free community, we've got the accelerator course, the webinars and that. Maybe we could have a separate space for our monthly book club. We come up with a cute name and we drop in each week. Maybe we could do like a live session once a month with everyone that's in the community, and we could like learn stuff about what they've taken out of it.
Yeah, cool.
Or it can just be comments, or we can work out the exacts.
Yeah, the ins and outs of it.
The ins and outs of it.
But yeah, that'd be cool.
Air.
Because I find, I find with, especially with books and even podcasts, if you can talk to people about it or have a 2-way discussion, you will retain a lot more information.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's a really good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So another thing that we're going to talk about today is New Year's resolutions.
Ah, we were.
So
what are yours New Year's resolutions?
My New Year's resolutions are to get fitter.
Okay.
And try to just be generally healthier, to eat better, exercise more. And that's pretty much it, to be honest. And obviously there's all the business goals and we all have all those things. But I think more from a personal level, it's just to get fitter and to pick up my reading habit more, because in the last 3-4 months of last year, 2024, it did slow down heaps because work was so chaotic.
Yeah.
But now I just want to be able to dedicate half an hour to an hour a day of just reading, because I really enjoy doing it.
That's great. In terms of getting fitter, what does that sort of look like?
I think eating better for sure. Eating enough dinner for one person and not 3 people. That's the worst. And just exercising. So going to the gym. Like this morning, we're recording here in Melbourne, went for a run, which was really cool. I didn't realize there's all these rowing clubs.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you ran down that way.
Yeah.
Down past the...
It's like a full setup, like
it's cool,
like an American private school. They were schools.
There's a lot of schools down there.
Yeah. So that was really cool. The Oz Open is on as well.
Yep.
So I got to run past all the courts.
Great.
But yeah, like running and doing weights in the gym.
Yeah. Do you follow like a routine? Have you got like a personal trainer or an app or anything, or like you just know
Not
what
really.
you're doing?
Just calorie deficit.
Yep.
So just eating less calories than I need. And in terms of training, going to the boxing gym twice a week, and then doing weights twice a week, and then doing the walks here and there. And I just find that from a mental standpoint as well, it's so much better because you have that separation. Because your heart rate's so high, you can't really think about anything else than survival. It's like switch off.
Absolutely. And it's sometimes my husband and I go to, it's in Kyneton, which is a bit out of Melbourne, but we don't live in Melbourne. But it's kind of like a group fitness, F45 / CrossFit /
cool.
That kind of thing, boot campy thing. And so it'll be either after work or before work. And I'm just like, it's the last thing I want to do. And then about 10 minutes, and my brain's like on all the time. And then about 10 minutes into this workout, I'm just like, literally can think about nothing else except whatever the next exercise is that you have to do.
Yeah.
And then you get to the end of it, and that mental clarity that you have is just like, anything that I was like totally stressed about, not stressed about anymore. It's not actually a problem. I can let that go.
Even I started doing, one of my friends, Simon, who does listen to our podcast. So I love mentioning Simon. So hey, Simon. He also started using Slack as well for his business. So
good on you, Si.
He's Si.
Does he go by Si?
Yes, now he will.
Okay.
He will definitely go by Si.
I think it's one of my toxic traits, is giving people nicknames that they haven't told me is a nickname. I did it with someone the other day. I was interviewing someone for the podcast, and her name was Chelsea, and within about 5 minutes I was like, so Chelsea, tell me about yourself.
Yeah.
And then I was like, you didn't introduce yourself as Chelsea.
Oh, that's so funny. Anyway, back to Si.
Yeah.
So he's, what are they called, these bands?
Oh, yeah.
Like resistance bands.
Yes.
And like in terms of just using them for stretching, that's something that I've started doing every day as well, because you can do it while you're watching TV.
Yep.
It's like, it doesn't lift your heart rate that high, but it's like really good to get a stretch in. Mm-hmm. So I started doing that as well every day.
Good on you.
And you can do that if you sit at an office.
Yep.
He recommended it, and it's just like in terms of like opening up your back, and because for me personally anyway, it's like my posture would get so much worse as the day got on, and then I would like turn into this chair like so bad. And I've found that doing this has really helped with that and helped with getting headaches and whatnot. So I'd highly recommend the resistance bands. And again, just YouTube it, different exercises you can do. But yeah, that's a fitness tip of the day. What about yourself, Zara? What are your New Year's resolutions?
I think my biggest thing, obviously same as you, like there's business goals, there's, financial goals, all those kinds of things. But my goal is to resolve my gut health issues.
Cool.
Which I'm going overseas next year.
Where are you going?
Well, my sister-in-law is moving to Italy for a year.
Right. Yes.
And so we're going to go and visit them and hang out. And I think we're going to go and do like the Northern Lights and those kinds of things.
My sister actually just got back from that. The photos
Insane.
Look crazy. Like sled riding, reindeers, looks awesome.
Yeah, well, our kids and nieces and nephews want to go to the Santa Claus village.
Yeah, cool.
In Lapland. So
that'll be sick.
And like stay in an igloo or something. Apparently, that's her thing. So she's going to organise that part. But I struggle with gluten. Don't know if I'm celiac or just like gluten intolerant, and also struggle with dairy. And my goal is to be able to eat like an almond croissant and like,
nice.
And so I'm just like, I have like 12 months to sort this out. So if there's any gut health specialists, nutritionists that are listening to this episode, please reach out to me.
Yeah.
Because
do a trade-off. Fix your gut issues, get a free marketing strategy.
Yeah, absolutely.
There you go, on the fly.
I'll give you a marketing strategy or marketing coaching for free. Yeah. Help me. It's weird because I never had any issues when I was like growing up or anything like that with any foods. And then when I was 21, I did the Camino de Santiago, which is like an 800-kilometer trek across the north of Spain. And I had some really...
Sorry, pause. 800 kilometers?
Yes.
You did it?
Well, sidebar, I didn't actually because I ended up severely sick and in hospital I ended up with Giardia.
What's that?
Essentially, I drank this really dodgy water out of... say no more. Dodgy water, and ended up in hospital for like 3 or 4 days. And since then have not been able to have gluten or dairy.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah. But almond croissants are one of my favourite joys in the world.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that is my goal this year. That's more of a personal goal, and apologies if that was too much information for anyone listening.
I think we paused it at the right time. Well, there you go. There's the call out. Yeah. Any nutritionists, gut health experts, please help Zara.
Please help Zara.
Yeah, and she'll help you with a marketing strategy, marketing coaching.
I feel like this episode kind of went on a bit of a tangent from what our initial plan was, but
it did.
Nice.
But I thought it was good.
Up.
We touched on a few things. We touched on some marketing stuff, some people and HR stuff.
Yeah.
A couple of book reviews.
Yep.
But it was good. It was good to be in studio for the first time and really looking forward to having a big year and just trying to get as much content out to everyone as we can.
Yep.
We're going back to 2 episodes a week.
Yes.
Because again, we just want to provide as much value to everyone as we can. And try grow our channel. And, if you do enjoy what we do, we'd love you to subscribe and give us a 5-star review. Can you do that? Yeah, you can on Spotify.
Yeah.
And we'd really appreciate that. And any feedback as well. If there's anything you want us to talk about or if there's any guests you want us to bring on, please reach out. We'll have a link in the show notes and we'd love to hear it.
Yeah. Thanks for today, Jordan.
Awesome. Thank you, Zara.
Thanks for watching this video on the Rask Network. While you're here, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can get videos each and every day on business, finance, investing, and so much more.